加冷河畔的一个纸箱里，用报纸和塑料袋包着的是一个人的下半身。
当我接到这个分尸案发生的时候，确实是有一点的惊讶，因为已经很多年没有发生过这个分尸案了。
不久后，尸体的上半身在对岸不远处被警方寻获。
Quite sensational case at that time when the case first broke.
The gruesome discovery of body parts at Kallang Riverside Park.
The papers were covering how body parts were being found in various parts of Singapore.
Police are still searching for the missing head and legs.
恩怨情仇，人为财死。一般上，这种谋杀案不外是为情啊，或者是为钱，动机也不外是这两个了。
从1970到2010年代，新加坡每8到10年就会发生分尸案。加冷河2005年出现碎尸，并不是在那里的第一宗。
类似的分尸案，在1974年，当时是有一个布商啊，他的妻子50多岁，被人分尸7段。设计这个谋杀案、分尸案的是死者的一个嫂嫂，是为了财啦。
肢解尸体再丢弃不同地点。是什么动机使凶手有意识地采取这种极端手段？尸体物证都不全，要如何拼凑凶手身份？
My name is Cuthbert Teo. I'm a forensic pathologist with the Health Sciences Authority and also a gazetted forensic pathologist under the Coroner's Act. On the 16th of June 2005, at about 10:30 in the morning, I received a call from the police asking me to go to Kallang Riverview Park. They told me that a body part had been found on the beach. There was actually another cardboard box which had also floated up. And when it was open, there was another body part, which this time was the upper torso that contained the chest area and the upper limbs. So both of these were examined at the scene, and I tried to match to see whether or not they are from the same body. So the cuts actually look quite similar. And the bone that had been cut, which was at the lumbar spine near the hips, they also fit very well. So as an initial assessment, I was able to tell the police that these two body parts came from the same person. So we managed to lift the fingerprints from the upper torso, and very quickly, by about 2 p.m., the body was actually identified as that of belonging to Leong Ming. She was a 22-year-old Chinese national working in Singapore.
与此同时，警方也紧锣密鼓调查刘红梅被害之前的动向。查案人员火速前往死者生前工作的电子厂，盘问他的同事以及与他有过频密接触的任何人。被盘问的包括刘红梅的其中一位管工符汝成。
我是符汝成，我是以前那个 Gears Semiconductor 的管工。那天我回去公司，我看到很多警察，他们穿便衣，他们带一个警察的 badge。个新闻已经出了，说下午有一个女孩子的尸体找到，然后刘红梅没有来上班。
When was the last time you saw the victim?
It was a few days ago at the family day. Yeah, she seemed very happy at the time.
The victim used to work under you, right?
Yeah, I was a supervisor before. Then Mr. Leong took over.
我不会 surprise 是阿亮的事。
警方将管工梁少初叫来问话。
What's your relationship with Leo?
I'm her immediate supervisor. There's nothing between us.
主要的侦讯人员发现梁少初手上有细微的伤痕，而且双手颤抖，这使他起了疑心。他们很快就发现梁少初与受害人关系暧昧，是情侣关系。
阿亮给警察 handcuff escort 回去 HQ Cantonment 那边，然后访问就没有出来呀。
Mr. Leong Soo-Chor, where were you in the morning of it?
查案人员问梁少初，6月15号他人在哪里？他说妻儿出国度假，他在家，刘红梅过来找他，这是他第一次过来。梁少初与刘红梅长达1年的婚外情，是从2004年中开始的。人人都知道梁少初是有家室的人，刘红梅与这位上司有私情。他跟刘红梅的婚外情在工厂里不算秘密。
他在做工，他们在那个 cubicle 里面 kissing。
但他同时也通过本地的婚姻介绍所积极寻找适婚对象。也许他意识到梁少初不可能为了自己而抛弃妻子，这段恋情终究不会有结果。
红梅呢是在这个2004年3月27号来参加的。她来这里的目的呢，就是想要找结婚。我对她的印象是，她是一个很温柔的女孩子，讲话呢很有礼貌。她主要是找男人呢，就是有涵养，最主要是对方要有心，结婚，因为她想留在新加坡。总共呢，我跟她介绍呢有5个对象，这当中呢，她对那个公务员还有那个做经理的啦，比较说有兴趣啦。
可是梁少初所描绘的刘红梅对他却非常专情，甚至愿意和他共赴黄泉。梁少初说，刘红梅起初提议2个人一起回中国，不过梁少初想到自己有家庭，一口拒绝了。按照他的说法，刘红梅竟然要双双殉情，
一起死，这样我们就可以永远在一起了。
刘红梅像是厌倦了跟梁少初纠缠不清，就要求一个解脱，到另一个世界双宿双栖。
So, I agree to it.
梁少初宣称，当时2人的安排是刘红梅先死，梁少初再自杀。 2005年6月16日，加冷公园出现一部分被肢解的尸体。调查显示，尸块属于22岁中国籍女子刘红梅。警方将嫌疑犯的身份逐渐锁定在刘红梅的情夫梁少初，他是刘红梅的管工。梁少初的住家可能就是凶案现场。警方从梁少初的住家取得大量物证，包括报纸和再循环废物塑料袋，带到新加坡卫生科学局进行检验。目的在于判断这些塑料袋和报纸是否跟在藏尸纸箱里头找到的相吻合。
We had the evidence of the boxes. The boxes contained some computer things that he had bought. The newspapers in which body parts had been wrapped were compared to the newspapers that he had in the living room. So every day when newspapers are printed and published, the newspapers are cut by machine. And these cuts vary from day to day, depending on how many papers are being printed. So in this case, the cuts in the newspapers that were wrapping the bodies actually exactly match the cuts in the newspapers that were found in the living room. Body parts were wrapped in plastic. There were these very similar plastic bags that were found in the living room and also in the room of one of his children. The masking tape that was used to secure the cardboard boxes also matched the masking tape that was found in his home. So in this case, there was a huge amount of forensic evidence that connected, first of all, the body parts to various objects, and these various objects were matched to things that were found in his home.
梁少初怎么这么心狠手辣？不但杀人，还将尸体斩成7块。分尸说明梁少初是一个什么样的人呢？被捕将近1年后，梁少初到法庭面控。他的辩护律师已故知名刑事律师苏巴士，到那个时候已经跟他接触了差不多10个月。
我是苏尼尔，我是个刑事律师。被告的家人聘请我的大伯苏巴士。当时我是个年轻的律师嘛，只是帮我的伯伯这种大的 case 要很小心的做咯。当时我们看到梁少初的时候，我们也不能相信他这种很普通的一个uncle可以做出这种东西了。坦白讲，要砍一个人的身体，那么多血，真的是很难做了。他讲话不大声，我觉得他很斯文，可是他的确告诉我们他做的是什么。我记得我大伯告诉他，我们会尽全力帮他了。
Mr. Leong Siu Cho, what happened?
The next thing she suggested that we should die together.
如果你怕的话，我可以先走。
In murder cases, usually we explore the psychiatric component of the case to see whether there's any diminished responsibility. In this case, there wasn't any psychiatric angle to go on. And what came out from the information gathering was the suicide pact.
一起死。
你是认真的？
认真的。你怕的话，我可以先走。
The suicide pact would then allow us to run a defense of consent.
And then what happened?
I look around my room and I saw a towel. And then I started going over her neck and I strangled her.
So in strangulation, If you use your hand, you might be able to find bruises due to the tips of the fingers that are applied to the neck. If you use a rope, you may be able to see a ligature mark around the neck. But as in the case of Liu Hongmei, that he used a towel. When you use a towel, because it's soft and broad, often you will not leave any injuries or very many injuries to the neck. And there were no injuries at all in the neck. So I had to ask myself, what are the possible reasons for her not struggling very much? Could it be that at the time of struggling, she was unconscious because of drugs or alcohol? But these were negative on testing. And the other possibility is that a person actually consented to being strangled. Because they consent, they are not putting up a struggle.
我们上高庭的第一天，苏巴也当然很稳定。我记得的东西是，不懂是苏巴还是控方问了梁修绰，他是怎样用毛巾杀掉受害者。苏巴叫我上去，我就站在梁修绰的前面，他们把真正的毛巾给梁修绰，连梁修绰放那个毛巾在我身上来表演他怎样。掐死那个受害者。回家之后，我妈妈的家人全部都是华人，对不对？他们讲要忘水嘛，就把那个7种花的那个去放那个水里面，叫我去用那个花来冲凉。
It didn't seem that likely to me that she was being strangled from the front. It's much more difficult to strangle from the front because you are crossing the ends of the towel across the front of the neck. And if you're tightening the towel, the leverage that you can get from the front is much less than the leverage when you can get from strangling someone from the back. So I told the police that perhaps the strangulation was quite sudden and unexpected.
To my mind, at least, the method of the killing was secondary. What was primary is whether it was consensual or not as part of that suicide pact.
I would have expected that even if somebody consented to being strangled, they would still by reflex still struggle.
Subhas in his book did mention a smile that he observed from Leong Siu Cho. I don't know which point of time it was because I was taking notes, right? The smile I remember was when we were doing the demonstration, and it was the situation more than anything else.
梁少初说，他在睡房勒死刘红梅的过程中，看到她脸色发黑，太过震惊，就不敢自杀了。
And what did she do with the body after that?
I dragged her body to the toilet. And I decided to get the chopper. And I stopped chopping her.
菜刀不足以砍断人骨，他用一个锤子来敲打菜刀，在浴室里将它肢解。梁少初急着把尸体处理掉，他必须在孩子回家之前完成，而且还打算照旧去上夜班。当时的律师助理苏尼尔对梁少初的观察是，他很平稳，没有因为杀人分尸而强烈表露过懊悔或愤怒或自大。欠缺情绪就跟一般人很不一样，他是否心理不正常？
So here we are at the crime scene of the Kallang body parts case. So according to Leong Siu Cho, who is the accused, the interaction between him and the victim actually occurred in their bedroom. on the bed over here. So according to him, there was actually a suicide pact between him and the murder victim, where eventually he actually killed the victim. So what do you think drove him to do such an act?
So actually there are many theories of or factors which may drive a man like Leong to commit such a violent murder. Few things that we can note. One thing is that actually violence often follows an escalation pathway. Secondly, violence usually occur or stem from an interaction between the person, his environment, his adversities, as well as his present circumstances.
那我们这样没完没了。
If you're looking at Leong's case, there may be distress, grievances that may arise during interactions between him and the victim. And progressively, this may actually morph into a more violent ideation, especially when one is actually emotionally charged by the real or delusional perception of threat, fear, injustice, or jealousy. That we can see in the Kallang body part murder.
He actually grabbed a knife from the kitchen and he tried to remove the feet from the rest of the body. But when he was trying to do so, he found that it was actually quite hard. So he grabbed a mallet, and with that, he was able to successfully remove the feet from the rest of the body.
We had the metal bits in the legs which connected it to the chopper that was found at the crime scene. Because the chopper was used to cut bone, the edges of the chopper had been nicked. And by looking microscopically at the edge of the chopper and the two metal fragments, the forensic scientists could actually tell that these two metal fragments exactly fitted the nicks in the chopper.
When he was trying to cut the torso, he first tried to cut it in half vertically. Because it was hard to do so, he then cut it horizontally.
There was a cut at the external genitals. One of the things that I asked myself whether or not there was some sexual element to this case. I actually did take swabs from all the area around the genitals, the thighs. They actually turned out negative. The cut at the genitals was post-mortem, that means done after death.
When he did so, the entrails actually fell out from the body, so he picked it up and flushed it down the toilet behind him over here. And when he was doing so, there was actually some blood left at the back of the toilet.
Traces of DNA that was found in the kitchen toilet wall on the red clocks that he had been using while dismembering the body. So all these blood stains and the blood and the DNA from the blood will belong to the deceased. And this was then now able to place that the deceased must have been in that crime scene.
Talking about dismemberment murder, a killer may actually dismember the victims for different reasons, and we can actually broadly term them into two terms: offensive dismemberment or defensive dismemberment. So for defensive dismemberment, it's actually serve a practical purpose rather than an emotional one. On the other hand, for offensive dismemberment, it occurs when actually dismemberment itself actually is done with the desire to unleash pent-up aggression, or sometimes to seek power, or sometimes actually to seek sexual gratifications upon the victim to satisfy a fetish. For Leong case, we believe that actually it serves for practical purposes, especially in Singapore, where Singapore is being a very small and densely populated city. And not only is actually hard for Leong to actually find a location to dispose the body, it's also very hard for him actually to transport the body, given there's high security, high surveillance. So for this case, I believe that he dismembered the body to dispose the body, so that he's more easily, so that he can actually avoid detection.
梁少初骑脚车到乌美一带，将刘红梅的脚板、鞋子和衣服丢进垃圾桶，再搭德士到新加坡河丢弃头颅和小腿，然后到住家附近的加冷河丢弃躯干。最后，他在上班经过红帽桥地铁站时，将他的手提袋和袋子里的物品丢弃在地铁站外。
The finding of the head and the two legs, they were actually quite severely decomposed already by that time. Because of a missing lower tooth on the left side, the front teeth were already starting to shift towards the center of the jaw because it was missing. Because of all these changes in the teeth, Dr. Tan positively identified her based on her dental records, the head belonging to Li Hongmei. And later on, the DNA was a match.
在新加坡气候下，尸体24小时内就会开始腐烂，要搜集完好的证据，挑战重重。1989年10月，警方调查了一宗腐尸案，遇害的是个15岁女生。
其实，在高度腐烂尸体的案子呢，死因其实是蛮难断定的。而在梁珊珊这起案件呢，法医也是无法进一步认定。
1989年10月2日，美华中学中3女生梁珊珊放学后，没有跟往常一样准时回家，从此下落不明。梁珊珊的父母没有接到勒索电话。12天后，一具高度腐烂的女尸在义顺荒凉的空地被战备军人发现，后来证实是珊珊。珊珊身首异处，警方认为是腐化导致头颅掉落，不过她下巴断裂却是重击造成的。
Hi, I'm Caroline. I'm a principal psychologist from the Police Psychological Services Department. I've been a psychologist for the last 20 years. I deal with crime psychology. This particular case, this could be a planned rape followed by an unplanned overkill of the victim. In this case, this type of offender would be a power reassurance offender. They would use a lot of threats and intimidation. They will also have selected a casual acquaintance as a victim, and they would apply fantasies to that victim. And then what would happen is that when they commit the assault, they might bring a weapon, and there might be some level of mutilation of the body.
珊珊失踪当天，她的父母就惊慌失措，只想知道女儿在哪里。他们找校车司机胡立国问个明白。
我是珊珊的妈妈，你今天有没有载珊珊回家？
今天我没有看到她哦。
没有看到她，珊珊今天有上学啊。
珊珊的爸爸不相信校车司机。
我有来学校2点多的时候，我载他其他同学，可是我都没有载到珊珊。你不相信我，我可以载你去车场问啊。
他还把梁珊珊的爸爸载到洋错港的修车厂。
你跟他说，那天3点到4点，我是不是把校车拿来你这边修理？
是啊。
梁先生当时不知道这是经过彩排的。
行啊，如果有人问你呢？我是早上来，你如果有人问你，你就讲说是大概3点到4点这样来的。
你不是早上来的没？
我这里听杨哥讲，有什么人问你都好，你就讲没有看到，知道吗？
珊珊的遗体被发现的第4天，胡立国被控谋杀梁珊珊。控方掌握的是间接证据， 没有直接证据显示胡立国谋杀梁珊珊，这可能是误杀或意外。
高度腐烂尸体的案子呢，死因其实是蛮难断定的。法医赵志成教授也是无法进一步认定。Oleko 在庭审中一直选择保持沉默，所以我们也无法确认他究竟是过失意外造成还是故意。
就证人的口供来看，胡立国不是没有嫌疑。他经常在口头上讨梁珊珊的便宜。
俺哥跟你拍张照。
有一次偷偷拍下她的照片，令他很不高兴。他也受不了胡立国说他身材好。
裙子穿这么短，给谁看了？俺哥看了。
他跟朋友投诉胡立国乱说话。尽管有迹象显示胡立国可能涉案，审理这起案件的司法委员却提出，胡立国做口供并非出于自愿，所以不能作为呈堂证供，以及控方只有间接证据，所以胡立国逍遥法外足足2年。胡立国无罪释放后，控方没有找到新的证据，却还是申请案件重审。
I was called to the bar in Singapore in 1985. I have practiced exclusively at the criminal bar since then.
Peter Fernando 处理过胡立国的案子。
I remember Oleko to be a shortish, tough-looking Chinese man.
案件重审，法庭基于5点要求被告抗辩：一、死者失踪那天确实在放学后坐上被告的巴士；二、被告对死者的父亲撒谎；三、被告要死者的同学撒谎；四、被告带警方到死者被发现的地点；以及5、被告对死者言语轻薄。
Oleko decided to remain silent. That is a choice that he made. In the absence of an explanation by him when his defense was called, had greatly strengthened the prosecution's case. He was constrained to draw an irresistible inference that he was the last person with the deceased and that he had intentionally caused the death of the deceased by an unlawful act under Section 300A of the Penal Code, and sentenced Oleko to the mandatory sentence of death.
梁珊珊和刘红梅2人的遗体都无法告诉世人他们是怎么死的。杀刘红梅的凶手承认杀人，杀梁珊珊的凶手却不承认，但他们同样都被判罪成。从被判刑到走上绞刑台，时间大约1年多。这段时期，他们的律师看到什么？救命！校车司机胡立国被控于1989年谋杀15岁女生梁珊珊，于1994年被判死刑。
Oleko appealed against that sentence of death. That is when I came into this case. He was one of my coolest clients. He understood the fact that he had been sentenced to death. So I don't think he regretted not giving his evidence. And if he didn't give his evidence, he would not be subjected to any cross-examination.
And importantly, there would be no further evidence led against him.
可是这一次，胡立国上诉失败。
To the best of my memory, Oleko denied that he committed the offense. If you ask me, did he show any or express any emotions? Was he emotional? Was he in tears? No. Oleko was a tough guy.
The suspect in the Kallang River body parts case has been slapped with 5 additional charges. He's alleged to have killed and dismembered Chinese national Liu Hongmei and now to have stolen from her as well.
至于梁少初被控谋杀刘红梅，审讯对他越来越不利。
前几天我去提款，发现我的提款卡不见了，里面有好几千块呢。
The police found out that Liu Hongmei had reported on the loss of an ATM card. That gave them their case theory that this was the precipitating event that led to the murder.
梁少初的辩护论点只有一个，就是他和刘红梅相约殉情。可是控方现在说，梁少初害怕偷窃的事情被拆穿会身败名裂，所以杀了刘红梅。
这是控方所讲的东西。梁少初在庭上从头到尾是讲互相自杀，最后法官不相信他吗？
经过16天的审讯，梁少初被判谋杀罪成立。2006年5月19日被判死刑。
That was a very somber day because in the High Court, when the death penalty is pronounced, everybody has to rise. The judge would then get the JLC, the Justice Law Clerk, to do the actual pronouncement of the accused person being brought to a place whereby he'll be hanged until dead.
苏尼尔的伯伯苏巴士上诉失败。
他的家人很好，他的家人从头到尾有支持他。上诉庭的时候输了之后，我们就会要求被告有点时间跟家人讲话，所以在最高法庭那边他们可以面对面讲话，真的很伤心了。一个命是一个命啊。
我们的介绍是这样，就是说为了安全起见，必须男的要来这里，女的来这里，见证两个人的条件适合，我们再介绍。
外面的人，他们的 perception， 他们接受说中国女孩子就是挖钱，我现在说给他，阿亮没有什么钱挖的，3个孩子，1个老婆没有做工，那些人说他是过力哥，自己去想。中国人有些来到这里很勤劳，他要 upgrade 他自己，学英语，他有他的想法，不可能跟你一个老人这样吗？我当然可怜他，年轻女孩子从中国来，刚刚做工，前途的很好，可是她的命到21岁还是20岁，给一个男人这样割断了。
我的名字是郑海川，我是殡葬的主持人。因为这个刘红梅的尸体，我看了，在心里面就是蛮可怜她了。为什么她的尸体会一个锯断？所以我就搭一个场面啊，弄好很多花啦，那好的棺木啦，就给这个刘红梅小姐了。那个脚板没有，因为找不到嘛。所以就做一个蜡的脚板，跟它放进去，给整身都完整了。 那很多观众都来看，都来拜访他这样嘛。但是我就一路要对这个刘惠梅做好，给她好好给她上路，就对了。
Yesterday was the 14th anniversary of when the accused was hanged. He was hanged on 30th November 2007. I often think about this case. I think the judge who heard the case at the first instance, Justice Tay, I think, he was quite eloquent in the conclusion of his judgment. He said that in this case, Romeo killed Juliet, and that he wondered how is it that a person who he had just cuddled, in his words, could actually mangle a body, which is something I've wondered also.
Well, for me, what I distinctly remember was going to see Leong Siew Chow a few days before the actual carrying out of the death penalty. Leong Siew Chow, I remember he agreed to have his organs donated. Second, I remember that, you know, all these death row inmates, eventually they get to choose their final meal or something similar in concept. Leong Siew Chow, I remember, wanted to share whatever food he ordered with the other death row inmates. So that was a nice touch on his part.
莎士比亚剧中的朱丽叶为情而死，罗密欧同样为爱送命。刘红梅父皇权跟情字却沾不上边，而是枉死于梁少初的自私和贪财。你可以通过 Millicent 应用程序、Spotify 或 Apple Podcast 收听更多新加坡的重大案件。